This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
All of us are looking for a life of meaning and significance. A life that makes a difference in the world. A life that truly matters. We believe this is found through the right people, platform, and purpose. We call this movement 3. It starts with giving people greater health through the power of our proactive wellness products. 3's innovative formulas deliver demonstrable results by maximizing bioavailability and cellular absorption, ensuring people everywhere can enjoy the nutrition they need to operate at their best. Building on our foundation of people-focused products, we provide a platform for unparalleled entrepreneurship and personal growth. 3 is there beside you every step of your journey towards building a business and a better life. Finally, we know that a sense of real purpose, the kind that moves hearts, minds, and mountains, comes through serving and elevating others. This philosophy is reflected in our caring community, which bring hope and life-saving help to people around the world. It's time to redefine what's possible and activate your full potential. It's time to live a life of purpose. It's time for 3.
Hey, it's time once again for another amazing and enlightening episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment. Welcome, I'm your host, Carl Gruber. Now, on this show, we focus on a wide range of topics, experiences, and discussions of all things metaphysical and enlightening. But the true core mission of this show is to explore in depth the spiritual aspects of this life in a body we call a human. So, in this show, we will continue this spiritual awakening mission. Now, Rachel Harrison is our guest today, and she is on her own journey of what she calls soul recovery. Rachel is a former dysfunctional alcoholic who lived a life of codependency, of family dynamics, and is now in her second attempt of recovering her own soul, and is now not only a minister, but she has a bachelor's degree in metaphysical sciences. She's a spiritual coach and a podcaster with her own show called Recover Your Soul. She works with people with addictions and the effects those addictions have on their relationships and every aspect of their life. Now, on top of that, she's a musician and a vocalist with her own recordings, and her website is recoveryoursoul.net. So, wow, Rachel, welcome.
Thank you so much, Carl. What a fabulous lead-in. I love it.
You know, I just have, like I told you earlier, I have fun with this, but I'm really excited to talk to you. It sounds like you have been on quite a ride in your life, but now it seems like you've tamed that bucking bronco to graze peacefully in that lovely pasture. Tell us about your 2 soul recovery attempts.
Oh my goodness, we're just going to jump in with that. You know, I realized that I started drinking very early on. Well, not as early on as some people. At about 21, I just started drinking. But I started drinking because I was uncomfortable with other people being uncomfortable. And unlike some people who have maybe the genetics of alcoholism, I was raised in a Buddhist home with a quiet single mother.
Wow.
So I was raised in New Mexico in the 1970s. My middle name is Little Flower. We lived a very specifically unique life. And there was no drama, no dysfunction, no complexity. And you would think that's fabulous, but the truth is it didn't set me up for the world well, Carl. And so when I got out into the world and started building our personality as we do, and we're especially in our teens and early 20s, I realized that I wasn't comfortable in this world of chaos. And so I think that drinking for me became a way to really handle the chaos that was in the world that was very different from this sort of non-confrontational way that I had been raised. And fast forward that into what alcohol is. Alcohol is an addictive substance. And so if used and consumed on a regular basis, it will do what alcohol does, which it will overtake your life, which is what ended up happening to me. So my soul recovery is very different than my recovery from addiction from alcohol. But the first time I got sober, the first time I quit drinking, was in the midst of a lot of complexity within a family that had an alcoholic husband, two wild and rambunctious kids with their own issues, and this complexity of life that I didn't know how to handle. And so I was in the illusion. I was in the dream. I was in the part of me that felt like I could make it be something else. And because I couldn't make it be something else, I went to every unhealthy behavior style that included addiction to try to cope with it, to try to tame how I felt, to try to do something about it. And so when I got sober the first time, I didn't really do a soul recovery journey on that time. I really just realized that I was an addict. And then, of course, you go back out thinking that you could manage it, couldn't really manage it. And then the second time that I got sober, which was coming up on 6 years ago, I realized that this wasn't around not drinking. This was really around my spiritual need to find the hole that was empty in my soul. And the hole that was empty in my soul couldn't get filled with my family or with drinks or with outside things. It needed to get filled with myself. And so it was my beginning of my spiritual exploration.
You know, that is so interesting, though, with things outside of myself. Just this morning, I was reading A Course in Miracles, and the chapter was, seek not outside yourself, because it's within. But wow, that is great. Well, let me go back for a moment. So your life is kind of reverse of many of my guests. You had this very peaceful, spiritually calm childhood, and then you went into the chaos of adulthood, addicted to alcohol and controlling. And so many people come from a trauma-based childhood, and then they carry that trauma over into life. That's interesting. And you said you weren't comfortable around people who were uncomfortable. So if you weren't drinking, you felt that for them to be comfortable, you needed to start drinking?
More that I just didn't know how to deal with. I didn't know how to deal with people who were unhappy. I didn't know how to deal with conflict. I didn't know how to deal with not being liked. I didn't know how to deal with people being upset. And so my way of calming myself down in those situations was to drink. And I didn't drink alcoholically in the beginning. I mean, anybody who's had a glass of wine or a margarita or something, you're like, oh, this is fabulous. It kind of takes the edge off. And so it helped my nervous system that hadn't been aligned as a young person to be able to handle stress. And so it was more that it became the stress medicine, you know. And even though I didn't come from trauma, I think this is the most fascinating thing about us as human beings, spiritual beings having this human experience. There is not a single person that gets to bypass the complexities of being a human being and the personality styles that get created and how we manage our lives and what behaviors come out of that. So even though I didn't have trauma as a kid, it still had its own traumas because I was learning how to be a codependent at a very early age by being good, you know? So even though I had a childhood where there wasn't yelling, it was almost because it wasn't okay to have those kinds of emotions. So it's complex, right? So you can have a big energies in a house, and then you're learning in that to either rage or have big energy, or you're learning to stay quiet. And then for me, it was quiet and peaceful. And what I learned was, don't ask for anything. Don't ask for, don't have an energy outside of this. This is what we want. It always needs to be quiet and peaceful. Be a good girl. So in the same respect, we may learn the same behaviors from a disruptive dysfunction versus sort of this expectation of everything being perfect and quiet and good.
This may seem like a dumb question, but what exactly is codependency?
Codependency is when you put somebody else's needs before your own, or you rely on somebody else for your spiritual, physical, emotional, and financial well-being. So it could be a combination of those things. But in general, codependency means that somebody else's needs get put above our own. So I learned at an early age that what my mom needed and wanted was number one. And I needed to make sure to support and do whatever it took to make sure that she was okay. And not because she was raging at me, but because it was the expectation of this peaceful, quiet Buddhist household.
And two, in certain ways, your story is not that all uncommon. I mean, we hear many, many stories about youngsters who were very nondescript when they were young, and they go off to college and they go wild. And, they do break every rule possible. I believe even the Amish allow their young people to do what they call a wilding to get it out of their system. So,
interesting. I hadn't heard of that.
Oh, yeah. Look into that. Yeah, I don't know if I know enough to talk about it in depth, but I do want to ask this. Before your soul recovery, was there a particular experience or incident that was a breaking point in your life where you simply knew you had to change?
I don't know if it was a particular incident, but my story, which I share my entire world and my entire life pretty vulnerably on my podcast, which I think is why it resonates with a lot of women in particular around the complexities of being a mom, the complexities of being a wife, the complexities of just being a human being. And part of that is just the sadness that comes at some point in our life where we hit that wall where you think, this isn't what I thought it was going to be like. And there was this moment in this second time around. I'd been going to Unity for 20 something years. I'd been a Buddhist, I'd been going to Unity, I'd been in New Thought my entire life. And I believe strongly that if I had not had those experiences, that I would have had a much more difficult experience. I really feel like it kept me way above what could have happened, right? Because it was always like right there. I was always being held by spirit, but I was still so caught up in this desire for it to look and be a certain way. And that was based on how my younger self had put a fantasy of what it's going to look like. Anyway, so I'm having this awareness that my husband's not what I want, my kids aren't what I want, my life isn't what I want, and I'm in my recovery in the first year. And some things shifted in me that I realized it was because I was choosing to see it the way that I was choosing to see it. And I would say that doing the Course in Miracles, I think it was 3 years ago that I started doing the Course in Miracles, was one of the largest, profoundly moving shifts in me that took all of this stuff that I had been learning for my entire life and spoke to me in a way where I realized it is as I choose to see it. And I could choose that I truly am powerless over my addiction. I'm powerless over the world. I'm powerless over the people in my life. Like, what if I chose to see it different? And from that moment forward, I think something broke open and profoundly changed for me, that started having it so that I could start having transmissions of information. It's all, the Course talks about how the past will disappear, the pain of the past will disappear. And I was so attached to my pain. And somewhere in all of this, I wasn't a moment, but it was just slowly over time, I don't have any attachment to any of that. Almost none, in comparison to what I was miserable about for, that many years. I'm 53 years old. I've been doing this for a while. And something slowly opened up. And that's the gift of grace. That's the gift of truly living a spiritual path, which doesn't have to be a God of anybody else's making. This is your determination of what spirit is for you. And that moment changed my life. And that's the moment that I try to offer to others as well.
Yeah, you were attached to your pain, and many people, well, a lot of people, all right, actually most people gain an identity from that. Well, I am my pain. There's nothing else, until you have a soul recovery like you. So what actually is your definition of soul recovery? How do you qualify that or quantify it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't think I actually have like a line that what is soul recovery, but the way I describe it is turning the attention to ourselves, letting go of our desire for the outside world to show up for us in any particular way, and to realize that our journey is uniquely our own, that this is the curriculum of life, and that this is our soul's journey, and that we're here to recover that part of us that is whole, and to truly see every experience in our life as an opportunity to move into our full expression of self. And so soul recovery is this process that has been slowly being given to me over the last years, that has steps that have they have a flavor of the 12 steps, in terms of kind of moving through what I think the 12 steps offer for people to be able to get to the other side. The 12th step in AA is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, right? It's about how do you open up to spirit of whatever it is. So soul recovery for me is about opening up to true spiritual connection, putting your connection with your spiritual self first, and letting go of that codependency that says, I need somebody else to provide for me, or somebody else is more important than me. And I work mostly with codependents and people who have addiction in their lives, just because that's my story. That's what I know best. That's what I'm healing from. I can only give you what I have, and that's what I've experienced. And I love the term because it can mean whatever it means to anybody. I don't even want to hold on to what it means, because I want it to be what it means for each person.
Let's talk more about this 12-step program from Alcoholics Anonymous. I've never gone through that, but I'm a lifelong runner, and I have two very good friends who joined AA 35 years ago, and they say that AA and the 12-step program and running saved their life. Why does the 12-step program work?
What I think is that when the 12 steps were developed, when AA was developed in I believe it was the 30s, you really were dealing with people who had lost everything. And alcohol, just like many addictions, is the solution until it quits being the solution, right? And when we lose ourselves in that way, and this is a spiritual program, so we can really talk about like the spiritual malady of not thinking that you're connected to anything, and that you are so consumed and so lost in your internal self being broken, being sick, being not enough, not being worthy. And what happens in alcohol and drugs is the addictive nature that it has within our system can completely take us over. So in the 30s, how it started was nobody was recovering from alcoholism. And it wasn't even a word, right? It was just like they were drunks. They were laying in the street drunks. They had, screwed up their whole family's lives. They had sucked all the money. They were hiding the bottles in the toilets. Like there was no hope for them. They were the hopeless. And when one of the friends showed up at Bill Wilson's house and he had found spirituality and it had kept him sober. And that became the answer. The answer became that turning your life over to whatever your concept of higher power is the solution, because you can't take one solution and remove it and not put something in its place. So it's this concept of saying, if your heart is broken and you're not whole, and you can move into a spiritual program, the spiritual program is the solution. So the 12 steps were created through the concepts that he got from a religious organization called the Oxford Group, along with, and I love this, that it's historically proven through some of the first people of the New Thought movement, the science of mind, unity, divine science. So those same people who were building this new metaphysical foundation also influenced the people who started AA. And that's why it's around spirit being whatever it is for you. And they use the terminology, but the steps allowed people to move through admitting that you're powerless over your addiction, that your life is unmanageable, coming to believe that there's a power greater than you that can restore your life to sanity, turning your life over to the care of that God of your understanding, having a searching, fearless, and moral inventory, like looking at yourself and saying, what's my part? How am I participating in this? Sharing it with another person and letting it all out without shame, releasing all of that, realizing what are the character defects that I've taken on from my pain, being willing to let them go, seeing who you've harmed, making amends to them when it is healthy to do so, and then bringing spirituality into your life as a way of being every day and saying, how can I show up as a whole spiritually grounded human being? How can I be of service in the world? And then finally having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, that you are actually coming from a place of self-responsibility, of wholeness, of connection to service, of connection to source. And those tools allowed people to let go of their shame, right? So much of spirituality is like releasing the shame. That's what the Course talks about, letting go of guilt. So it's this process of moving through that and then continuing the work with others.
I think the beauty of the 12-step program from Alcoholics Anonymous is it doesn't involve religion. It is just pure spirituality. So you could be a Muslim or a Hindu or an Orthodox or a Catholic or a Presbyterian and come there. And that doesn't play a role at that, because, then people get divided and separated. Mm-hmm. This is just exactly what you're talking about. Another, and you and I are both students of A Course in Miracles. And of course, forgiveness is one of the main key elements of A Course in Miracles, non-dualistic spiritual teachings. What role does forgiveness play in the recovery of your soul?
Oh my gosh, forgiveness is everything. Forgiveness is everything, because we think of forgiveness as the standard human being from the old perspective that says, you did something to me and I was hurt by it, and I'm going to decide out of the kindness of my heart to forgive you, but I'm still pissed, ultimately, is really what forgiveness looks like in how we do it. I forgave him for that, but really inside you're angry, you're holding on to resentment. And the concept of in soul recovery that I'm so grateful for that has really come through to me has a lot to do with my experience with the Course in Miracles. There is no guilt, there is no judgment. So if we can start to shift how we interact with the people in our lives and start seeing it in a way that says, these experiences happened, and it can go all the way to some pretty profoundly traumatic experiences. In soul recovery, what we're doing is we're looking at our feelings. We're recognizing our experience as our own unique human being. We're not looking at whether our parents did a good job or a bad job, or whether our husband is a good husband or a bad husband, or our kids are good or bad. I did all that. I blamed and shamed and judged and wanted my family to be a certain way. And so when you come from this concept of forgiveness that even takes away the power of someone to do something to you, and you recognize that you're in this experience, this curriculum of life together, and that you feel your feelings and you recognize how it felt to you, but you separate out with compassion two human beings who are each having their own experience with everything that comes with it, all their patterning, all their beliefs, all their shame, all their experience. And you let go of the attachment to it happening to me and my woundedness. And you look at, how can I heal myself? How can I take care of myself? How can I attend to my feelings? And then forgiveness is around dispersing the energy that wants to hold on to the pain. So it's never about saying, I forgive you for what you did. It's because it's not claiming that you can even hold on to someone did something to you, because you're taking your power back and saying, this may have happened, but I am not going to hold on to the poison or the pain or the resentment of what happened. I'm going to choose to see it from a different perspective. I'm going to open my heart to make sure that what I need and who my little girl or my little boy, what they need, instead of this other person fulfilling something for us. And so in that forgiveness, we're really forgiving ourselves for having the experience and for how it affected us.
Well, that was an absolutely beautiful explanation of forgiveness. You explain how the world practices it, where I like the way you said it. I'm still pissed, even though I forgive you. But in truth, you need to completely forgive the entire experience. Even you and I talked about A Course in Miracles teacher, Gary Renard, before he came on here. And in his book, The Disappearance of the Universe, his teacher says, Gary, you need to forgive everybody. And Gary responded, said, even Hitler? And he goes, and his teacher said, yes, Gary, even Hitler, which is pretty amazing. So thank you for that beautiful explanation. I am really curious about this. Like I told you, I have a loose outline of questions here, and I was just thinking this. Once you recovered your own soul, what was it like to watch a change in your husband and your family and the people around you?
That's a great question. First of all, I don't think our souls are ever totally recovered, because it's a continual process till the minute we die, right? But I say this all the time. I am actually not sure whether they're any different, but I'm different.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm different. And so in that experience of me not walking into the house and blaming and being upset and feeling like the world isn't showing up for me the way that I want, they now have the space to have their own experience without my judgment of it. And through that, a safety has started to happen between us, a trust that is happening within our whole family that has allowed everybody to be more comfortable with exactly who they are and exactly where they're at. My entire family are still addicts. My kids still use and drink. My husband has been sober for 2 months, right? Like, he's still is out there playing the game and trying to tame the beast. I don't care anymore. Not that I don't care from the, like, I don't care about you perspective, but truly from the place that's the perspective that says, it is not mine to hold anymore. That I can love them, see them, witness for them, be present for them in a way that is profoundly changed from who I was before. So my husband and I broke up actually for an entire year at one point, about 10 years ago. And even though we'd gotten back together, it had gotten really unhealthy. My soul recovery has changed our relationship to probably the best that it's been since we were first married. But he's not doing the work the same way I'm doing the work. He's not studying the course. He's not reading, like I read Wayne Dyer or something spiritual in the morning for 5 minutes every day. But he kind of listens to it like he's listening to the news, like he's in his own journey.
Yeah.
But I don't care anymore from that perspective that says, I don't need you to be in it the same way that I'm in it, for me to be in my experience. And through that, so much more love and connection and ability for us all to just love each other for exactly where we're at. And that's the pain of the past, that I could hold on to some really hard years, Carl, some really hard years. And I had this one story. So we're driving in the car with a girlfriend, and she says, "Oh, how did you and Rich meet?" Right? So we start telling the story about how we met, and it's like opening a chapter of a book, right? You can feel the energy, and we're the sparkle of how we met, and how fun it was, and how much we loved each other, and you could just feel the energy in the car of how beautiful that was. And some part of me wanted to tell the crap story, And so I start telling the crap story, and as quickly as that sparkly, beautiful energy of how beautiful life is, I was immediately immersed, and I immediately was mad at my husband.
Mm.
And I could feel the sticky, blamey, grievance, shameful guilt of those years. And I could feel their poison. And as we finished that conversation, it was so amazing how I was so affected by that. And I was so grateful for that experience, because what it reminded me is we choose which chapter are we going to open, and why did I need to open that part of the book? That book doesn't exist anymore. That chapter is closed. And it has been a lesson in my life that I received from the Course in Miracles, the guidance that is, you don't have to go back and keep digging up those dirty, nasty graves. Just because it happened doesn't mean I walk in the house every day and I go, you used to be like this. Because he's not like that anymore. So that particular experience was so profound that it reminded me that I get to pick what I'm going to remember. I get to pick what I'm going to talk about. I get to choose in this moment right here, right now, who I want to embody, what parts of me I want to be. And unless I'm digging for something in particular that is going to heal me in a way that I need to be healed, I do not go back and open those chapters. They are closed. And that has been huge for me.
That story is really a great example of how everything is energy. You're doing that remembering of when you first met, and all of a sudden, you're vibrating high up here, and instantaneously you shifted your energy just like that in the opposite direction. It's true. One last comment about forgiveness. I've had Dr. Joe Vitale on the show here, and of course he's one of the most famous teachers of the law of attraction in the world. But he's a huge proponent of the Hawaiian spiritual practice Ho'oponopono, and that is all about forgiveness. The 4 phrases: "I love you," "I'm sorry," "Please forgive me," "Thank you." And as he teaches, you're actually saying it to yourself, and it changes everything around you and in your life. Wow, boy, you have some great stories. You are such a good teacher. I love this.
Well, thank you.
So, one question: what led you to become a minister? You're actually a certified reverend, right?
I am. I'm a certified metaphysical minister, and I had wanted to be a unity minister for a long time. So I've been attending. Okay, so the story of that is I was raised Buddhist, and I loved being raised Buddhist. It was a really profoundly loving, open. I was born in 1970. It's in the beginning of Buddhism when the teachers were first coming. It was very accessible. So, being able to see the Karmapa, being able to lay as a little girl on the robes of high lamas and, play with their prayer beads, and the sounds and the smells and the colors are incredibly profound to me. And my grandmother, from the kindness of her heart, was a fundamental Christian, and she was terrified about what was going on with us. And now I can understand where she was coming from, now that I've had some distance from it. But as a 7-year-old little girl, when I went to visit her while my mom was in India studying with her Buddhist teachers, and this little raggy New Mexico girl shows up, my grandmother was profoundly offended and spent an entire month trying to save my soul, and Bible studies, and I had already learned how to be a very good little girl, and so I did everything that I needed to. But it turned me off immensely to Christianity and the concept of God. So all the way from 7 years old to 22 years old, if you said God, if you said religion, my reaction was strong and unhappy, right? I didn't want anything to do with that. So I meet my husband at 22 years old, and he's a born again Christian.
Wow.
And he was everything I ever wanted. That part was a little affronting, but he was so kind and so open and so curious about Buddhism that it made me open to Christianity. And so he moved a little bit off of the fundamental Christianity and moved over, and we found Unity, which was a place that had a Christian foundation, but was metaphysical, was open to Buddhism, was open to all these different new thought ideas. And it was a place where we could come together and be both of those things, that I could always have my Buddhist foundations and he could always have his Jesus foundation. And that church was so important and powerful to me throughout all those years. And so I'd had this part of me that thought, I want to be a unity minister. But I was in pretty much of a dark night of the soul for a lot of this being at the church. And so, you can't give what you don't have to give, or you shouldn't try to heal as an unhealed healer. And so when it came to this last 6 years where profound shifts were happening in my life, my first thought was I wanted to be a unity minister. And Spirit brings you what you're supposed to be brought. And a friend came over to my house one day and said that she had done the metaphysical university, and it was right for me. It was self-study. It was more along what I was interested in. I didn't know there was anything else. And so during the pandemic, I just hunkered down and studied. It was one of the most beautiful times in my life. The world was quiet. I could be quiet. I could do this work. I was, starting to do the podcast and just sharing my experience. And I was so profoundly moved, along with the metaphysical university and with the Course in Miracles and all the other things that I was studying, that that this soul recovery concept just blossomed in it. And so through it, that gives the space to be able to do spiritual coaching, so spiritual counseling. So my main income is from spiritually counseling, and I am profoundly blessed to have a thriving business that is not me. It is not me who shows up. I am a conduit for something greater still. I'm humbled by the ability to connect and change people's lives, but it is really the Holy Spirit that is working through me. It's pretty incredible. So I am very grateful for the metaphysical ministry opportunity to be and then I speak at churches on Sunday. But
I would imagine that some of my viewers and listeners would like to know, what is there a difference between spirituality and metaphysics, or do they just simply complement each other?
I think spirituality is an entire concept that is sometimes given a bad rap and seen as, all the woo-woo stuff. But spirituality really just means we're not putting a dogma on it. It doesn't have to be any particular thing. It's opening to everything, because you could be a very spiritual Catholic, or you could be a Catholic that has no spirituality. So to me, spirituality is like the openness to it all. And whether you're dualistic or non-dualistic, it doesn't matter. And metaphysics, I believe, is the concept of bringing all of the mystical teachings in. For the beginning of humans and the beginning of time, these concepts that there's more to be revealed, more to be opened to. So I think that they toggle each other, but you don't have to be metaphysically interpreting things to have spirituality. So I love that spirituality says, just go be in nature, just feel the beauty of a tree. Just look in the sky. You've got the cosmos behind you. Look at the incredible nature of what our stars and our planets are. If that's all you can reach for, you've already moved towards an opening that is bigger still.
Yeah, I think spirituality and metaphysics are in a beautiful symbiotic dance. And in truth, you explain that well. True spirituality is metaphysical at its heart, because you're right, it goes beyond all the paradigms and the teachings we've been led to believe, the limitations and all that. Yeah, wow. I'm curious about this. Have you had anything that you might classify as a highly experiential spiritual awakening, like a vision or visit from angels? I don't believe you have to have that to be, but so many of my guests have these crazy experiences.
I appreciate you asking that, because no, Carl, I have not, and I'm jealous of all those people who have had those experiences.
And you know what? You and I are the same. I have not. I'm more like of a facilitator to bring people in here. And so, wow, there's somebody else besides me who hasn't had like a flash of light and, St. Michael visit me. Well, he probably has, but I didn't notice. So
I think it's important that you don't have to, I remember the first time I heard that Pema Chodron couldn't do the visualizations and meditations, and how reassuring that was for me, because all of our brains work a different way. And when I'm meditating and you say the color blue, I know what the color blue looks like, but my head is not filled on its interior with, blue. And if you say, you're on a mountain stream, I know what a mountain stream looks like, but I'm not visualizing a mountain stream. And it wasn't until I heard someone like Pema Chodron, who you just respect so much, or I respect so much as a, Buddhist teacher, that she said, oh yeah, I couldn't visualize, and that's okay, that I had permission for it to be okay. Mm-hmm. And in the same way, to be a metaphysician or to be on the spiritual journey or to meditate, what I know when I meditate, when I'm truly in my heart, like I feel a lightness, I feel a completeness, I feel a wholeness. And just because that doesn't allow me to maybe go up into the astral planes or have a vision of light or, whatever it is. If I think it has to be that other thing, I'm going to diminish my own experience. I'm not going to trust that my experience is truly my connection with whatever my definition of source is. And so I think we compare each other too much to what somebody else's experience is as being better or being right. But knowing that other people have had that, I still want it, but I want it in a different way that doesn't feel less than. It really just feels like maybe someday I'll have a Kundalini experience. I don't know. But right now, my life has changed and I am profoundly changed in a way that I am happy. I am free of anxiety. I was at a level 9 anxiety every day of my life. I'm at a 1 and sometimes I'm at a 3. I have no desire to use any substance of any kind to change my mind and make me feel differently. I walk in the world in gentleness and compassion, and I don't judge, and I can let go. Like that, to me, I will take over, visualizations. But it's different for every person, and they each just need to hold on to what feels good to them because it's all that matters.
Yeah, well said. And I think those people who have those very, very exotic experiences spiritually, it was their journey, their choice when they came into this life to experience those things, and exactly in a way that they could relate to it. We are talking to Rachel Harrison, an amazing teacher who has a beautiful explanation in soul recovery. I saw one last statement. We're going to roll out of here in a little bit. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, but I saw that you can help a person learn to be okay with those around her that are not. I'm guessing, especially at first, that's easier said than done. And you know what? We all encounter that.
Yes. And, some of the hardest ones to learn how to be okay, even if they're not okay, is our family.
Yes.
My experience of hearing for the first time someone say you're only as happy as your least happy child became the way that I lived my life, that meant that explained who I was at that time, that I could only be as happy as my least happy child or my least happy family member. And if we have control of nothing outside of ourselves, all spirituality shares with us that we have control of nothing outside of ourselves. As humans, we're clawing for control. It's the second tenet of the Four Noble Truths, right? That life is suffering, right? And that suffering is our attachment. So the attachment that we have to somebody else being okay. And then when I started doing this journey and truly diving into my soul recovery and realizing the more that I give my power away to somebody else and say, I can only be as okay as you are, means that I will never be able to truly be in my own body for whatever it is, whether that's okay or not. And if I can allow somebody else to be exactly where they are, and sometimes those are really hard situations. I work with a lot of people who have family members who are addicts, and there's a lot of hardship and a lot of pain. Addiction is a cover for pain. That's what it was for me. When we can allow them to be exactly where they are in their experience with compassion and not doing the empathy that says, I'm going to take it. Empathy can mean I'm going to carry your burden for you, instead of compassion, which says, I see you. I see that you can hold this. I witness it, but I'm not taking it on. Then we take our power back and we say, I actually can do my own process. I can have my own experience. I can actually be okay, even if our planet's not okay, our politics aren't okay, our family's not okay, my kids, if my kids are not okay, I can feel the pain that it feels to have someone that you love hurting, but I am not carrying their burden anymore. And I can actually move past those emotions, let them have their experience, and sit right here. And I'm okay right now. I'm good. And I've got a lot of stuff going on outside of this room that's hard, but I'm okay. And that power of taking your power back means that you're getting closer to seeing everybody in the world as our brothers and sisters, as one with all, and experiencing our own existence in its pure form and not attaching to everybody else to make you be okay.
Well, your advice is excellent, especially this time of year during the holidays here in the United States. And one of my favorite lines comes from, and I'm sure you know who Ram Dass is. Ram Dass once said that if you think you're spiritually enlightened, just go spend a weekend with your family.
Exactly. Ram Dass is one of my major teachers. I'll just tell one more story before we close up. There's this picture on my wall that's my mother holding me as a little baby. And she's clearly a hippie, and she's, looking out over the, probably looking for my father, to be honest. And she found this picture, a candid picture was taken of her. She found it 30 years after it was taken on a thrift store wall. And it was when she had been in Boulder for a hippie gathering that had been where Ram Dass had spoken, and a couple other people I can't remember. And it was this moment where she found this picture of herself, because we had lived in New Mexico, that transformed her life and made her make a different move in her life, that she was asking for direction. But for me, what I love about that picture every time I look at it is how profound Ram Dass's teachings are for me, and that it's been there the whole time. This is the thing about spirituality and the teachings of wisdom. It's all been there the whole time, but it isn't until right now that I'm ready for it. And so when we're ready, we can, as Buddha would say, clear the dust from our eyes, or Jesus would say, have ears to listen. There's no judgment about when it's our time. It's our time when it's our time. So I love Ram Dass, and now I eat him up, and it's 53 years later, and I was there with him as a baby, 53 years ago.
Well, Ram Dass, actually, even though he's been gone a number of years, he's got a big Instagram channel. He's posting, somebody's posting his stuff every day. And of course, in Ram Dass's later years, I guess he had a stroke or something and was wheelchair bound. Dr. Wayne Dyer was his caregiver in many ways. He supported him financially and everything, which I thought was beautiful. One last thing I want to ask, I love this part because I used to be in radio as a DJ and played music. You're a musician and you record music. I heard some of it on your website. How'd that come about? And it sounded kind of a little bit countryish.
Oh, that's interesting. So my dad is still a singer, songwriter, hippie musician in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So I was raised with a musician father, and I've been writing songs for a long time. I'm definitely influenced by bluegrass and folk music. So it has that air. And I've been lucky enough to be able to sing with some really wonderful people. And it's just an expression of emotion. It's a place where you can really pour your heart out. So yeah, there's on my website and also on Spotify or some of my music.
Yeah. And if you go to her website, recoveryoursoul.net, is that it? Mm-hmm. You can actually buy her songs individually on there. So go check that out. Some good stuff. What's the best way actually for people to connect to you? And what is your website again?
Yeah, so definitely the website, recoveryoursoul.net. And the podcast is called Recover Your Soul. It's on all streaming platforms and on YouTube as well. And from there, you can connect to my social media handles. And I am so grateful to have a really thriving community. So I think of Recover Your Soul as a community. And there's a private Facebook group. We have a once a month support group for free on Zoom. I really think of us in the new church. I don't like the word church, but we come together as community and we grow and we learn and we expand and we support each other. And so this has come to me to be able to be a spiritual teacher to many in those who are ready to come and listen. And it just is so remarkable how much vulnerability there is, how much support there is. And I'm just incredibly grateful to be able to be on this journey and path and to feel freedom in my own right, to be healed in my own right.
Well, Rachel Harrison, it's been an incredible honor to have you on the show. You're doing beautiful work, and thank you, my friend. Namaste, namaste.
Namaste.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with host Carl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of World Awakenings as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment daily life. Much love and light to you, my friend, and thank you for tuning into World Awakenings.